Boots slapped the hard-packed dirt, sharp and furious. Ruth Bellamy didn't knock. She kicked open the sheriff's office door with a crack that silenced the dice game inside. Sheriff Dunn barely looked up, just leaned back in his chair, chewing a dry sprig of tobacco, a fat sweat ring under his hat. The girl behind Ruth clung to her coat, trembling, bare feet raw and caked in blood. One of her arms hung useless, wrapped in torn calico. The saloon's piano had gone quiet. The street outside held its breath. "Help her," Ruth said, voice flat. "Now." Dunn's eyes flicked to the girl, then back to his cards. "She hurt?" he asked lazily. "She's torn to hell and back." "She fall?" he asked, raising a brow. "Cactus'll do that, especially if a girl's got no shoes." The girl made a sound, something between a breath and a sob, her fingers tightening around Ruth's coat like it was all that tethered her to life. Ruth didn't blink. She ran. From Wainwright land. That changed the air. Men at the table stiffened. Dunn's jaw twitched. "You accusing the Wainwrights of something, Ruth?" "I ain't accusing. I'm telling." She came down from their ranch screaming. "She's been whipped. Used. She's got rope burns on her neck, and her dress is blood stiff." Dunn's hand hovered near his belt, not for his gun, but for his badge, as if debating whether it still meant anything. "She a thief. She's a child." He glanced at the girl. Her face was turned, dirt-streaked, lips cracked. She didn't meet his eyes. "Wainwright say different, I'd wager," he muttered. "I don't give a damn what they say. You gonna do your job or not?" Dunn stood slow, tugged at his belt. "You want trouble, Ruth? You've got a good start on it." "I don't want trouble." Ruth's voice dropped low. "I want justice." The sheriff stepped around the desk, inches from her. "You want justice? Take her to the preacher. Maybe he'll pray the sin out of her. But don't drag your poison back in here. You think folks forgot about Caleb? About what happened to him?" Ruth stiffened. "That bastard drank himself off a cliff. That ain't how folks remember it." The girl behind her whimpered, "Please," so soft it barely lived. Ruth stepped between her and the lawman. "If she dies, it's on you." Dunn spit on the floor. "I already got more graves than bullets in this town. I won't add another for your ghosts." Ruth stared a moment longer, then turned. Outside, the town had gathered. Not close, but near enough to watch. Women from porches, men by posts. None stepped forward. Ruth mounted slowly. The girl could barely climb up, but Ruth pulled her on behind. Her body was shaking. She buried her face against Ruth's back and whispered, "Hold me. Use me. Just get me out of here." They rode. Ashvow shrank behind them, quiet as ever. Not a soul followed. The wind howled against the mesa ridge. The horse kicked dust through brittle scrub as they wound down the canyon trail. The girl passed out twice before they made it back to the ranch. The land was dying, brittle fences, dry creek, cattle thinner than shadows. The barn groaned with age. The house leaned under years of wind. But it was theirs. Hers. Ruth carried the girl inside. The parlor was dark, cool. She laid her gently on the couch, lit the stove, and brought a pan of water. The girl flinched at the first touch, eyes wide. Ruth didn't ask questions, just cleaned her wounds with quiet hands. When she peeled the dress back, her jaw clenched, lashes across her back, bruises fresh and layered, old scars beneath. "What's your name?" Ruth asked. Silence. She waited. "Eliza," came the whisper. "Eliza Quinn." Ruth nodded. "You're safe here, Eliza. For now." Eliza stared at the ceiling. "They'll come. I know. They always come. I know." Ruth stood, walked to the fireplace. Above the mantel, where a family photo once hung, was only empty wood and nail. She knelt, pulled aside the rug. A creak. A hidden panel. She lifted the board. Inside, a long cloth-wrapped bundle, worn smooth from years untouched. She drew it out, slowly. The cloth unwrapped to reveal cold steel, a battered Springfield rifle, old as the war. Beside it, a folded jacket with Union blue faded to gray, and at the bottom, a rusted tin star. She held the rifle, ran her fingers along the stock. Her reflection blinked in the dull iron. For a long while, she said nothing. Then, quiet as wind through bone, Eliza spoke. "Were you ever scared?" Ruth looked up. Her voice cracked like dry bark. "Always." She set the rifle down, but I never let it win. She was out of bed, rifle in hand, before her bare feet touched the floorboards. The scream had come from downstairs, sharp, strangled, and too real to be a dream. She stormed through the dark hall, nightgown whipping against her calves. In the parlor, Eliza thrashed on the couch, tangled in the quilt, eyes wide open but not seeing. Her mouth gaped in a silent cry now, hands clawing at the air, at her own neck, like something was pulling her back down into hell. Eliza! Ruth dropped the rifle and grabbed her shoulders. Eliza, you're safe. It's just a dream. Just a dream. The girl's breathing came in broken gasps. Her eyes darted like a trapped animal's. Then, finally, she blinked and saw Ruth. She burst into sobs so fierce they racked her entire body. Ruth sat down beside her and held her like a mother would, like she hadn't in years. Eliza buried herself into the crook of Ruth's arm, shaking and whispering nonsense, names, apologies, pieces of things no girl should know. The fire had died. The ranch groaned around them, wind scraping at the windows. I didn't want to, Eliza choked. He said it was my fault. I didn't want to. You don't have to tell me, Ruth murmured. But I want to. You helped me. No one ever stayed. Silence. Then came the words, low and rough, like they were being dug out of the girl's bones. It started when his daddy died. The old man was the mean one, but Thomas, he got worse when there was no one to stop him. Said I owed him for food, for shelter. Called it debt. Ruth didn't move, just listened. Eliza kept talking. He kept me in the cellar. Said it was just a game. He laughed when I cried. And the others, the ranch hands, they all looked away. How long? Ruth asked. Eliza stared at the ceiling. Since last spring. I ran twice. Both times he brought me back. Said the sheriff, don't listen to strays. She shifted under the quilt and winced. Her ankles were raw, rope burnt. Her wrists, too. She pulled the blanket up, as if trying to disappear inside it. Ruth stood, crossed the room, and poured water from the basin. Her hands trembled as she carried the glass back. Eliza drank greedily. They'll come, she said again. Yes, they'll bring men. I know. Ruth walked to the window. Out past the corral, nothing moved but wind and dust. A hawk circled over the distant ridge. The sun was rising, pale and colorless. How do you keep living like this? Eliza asked softly. Ruth didn't answer right away. She unlatched the window and let the air in. It smelled like dry earth and far-off storms. Because it's mine, she said. Every nail, every rock, every head of cattle left. I bled for this land. Eliza looked toward the rifle resting on the mantel. Is that what you used in the war? Ruth's shoulders tightened. She didn't turn around. I was 15 when it started. My father enlisted for the Union. Took me with him. Said I'd pass for a boy easy enough. I did. Eliza blinked. You fought. Sharpshooter. 60 confirmed. Never counted the rest. Silence sat heavy in the room. I thought you were just a rancher, Eliza said. I thought so too. Ruth finally turned. Her face looked carved from stone. But some things you bury, they come crawling back when you least want them. Outside, a crow landed on the porch rail and screamed. Eliza sat up slowly. I want to leave. You will. You'll come with me? No. The girl froze. Ruth walked over and knelt by her. They won't stop chasing you. Not unless someone makes him. Someone who knows how to do more than hide. Eliza grabbed her hand. I'm tired of hiding. Ruth squeezed gently. Good. Then we fight. She rose and crossed the parlor. At the far wall, a framed photograph sat behind a dusty glass. Ruth picked it up, wiped the grime away. A younger version of herself stood between a man with a crooked smile and a girl with bright eyes. Your daughter? Eliza asked. Ruth nodded once. Emma. She was 9 when the fever came. Caleb drank worse after. Never was the same man again. I'm sorry. So was he. Ruth set the picture down and moved to the corner chest. She opened it and pulled out what she hadn't worn in years. A worn duster, a shell belt, and a blue kerchief faded nearly white. One by one, she dressed in silence. Eliza watched her like someone watching a mountain wake up. You look like a soldier. I was. Ruth slung the rifle across her back. You're not going to town, are you? Ruth met her eyes. Justice don't ride itself. Outside, the sky was pale gold now. The day had begun, and soon, the hounds would come sniffing. Ruth walked to the door and paused. "There's a small spring 2 miles north," she said, "hidden between two hills. Stay there till you hear otherwise." "I want to help." "You already did," Ruth said. "You reminded me who I used to be." Eliza stood, wrapped in the quilt, trembling. "What if they find me?" Ruth's voice was calm. "Then God help them." The bullet tore through the fence post with a crack that scattered the chickens. Ruth didn't flinch. She stayed on the porch, legs crossed, rifle laid across her lap like a sleeping dog. The smoke curled from the busted slat, drifting across the dry yard like ghost breath. 3 riders waited just beyond the property line. One of them twirled a revolver lazily. Another chewed on a matchstick. The third wore a white hat and a coat too clean for this dust-strangled land. Thomas Wainwright. He grinned like a preacher at a funeral. "Morning, Miss Bellamy." Ruth rocked once in her chair. "You missed." "Did I?" He turned and winked at the man beside him. "Might be my trigger fingers still sleepy. Or maybe your fence just looked like it needed fixin'." She didn't answer. He nudged his horse forward. The other 2 followed. Boots scraped dirt as they stopped at the edge of her porch. "We're looking for a girl," Thomas said. "Name's Eliza. Ran off yesterday. Stole something of ours." "Your daddy's land papers?" Ruth asked. "Or just his taste in cruelty?" Thomas's smile didn't change, but the men behind him shifted in their saddles. "She don't belong here. She doesn't belong to you." He laughed. It was the kind of laugh meant to show teeth. "Well, that's where you're wrong, Miss Bellamy. Everything on Wainwright land belongs to the Wainwrights. That includes stray girls with bad habits." Ruth stood, slow, her boots echoing hollow on the porch. The rifle didn't lift, but it didn't need to. "She ain't here," she said. "Sure she's not," Thomas said. "But just in case she wanders back, I thought I'd pay a friendly call. Make sure there ain't any miscommunications between neighbors." "You're not my neighbor," she said flatly. "You're a disease." He stepped off the horse. The 2 men behind him stayed mounted, fingers near their belts. Ruth saw the twitch in their shoulders. Young, quick, but not quicker than her. Thomas's boots hit the porch with a thud. "Let's not pretend, Ruth. The whole town knows what you are. A widow, a ghost, a shell." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "You think anyone would miss your bones if they got lost in a canyon somewhere?" She leaned into eyes ice. "I think you ought to ask your daddy's ghost how hard I am to kill." His hand twitched toward his coat. She didn't move. Behind her, the door creaked slightly, then stopped. Thomas's eyes flicked toward it, then back. "You touch that handle," Ruth said, "and I'll blow your knees off and let the coyotes guess what gender you used to be." Thomas smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. He stepped back, straightened his coat, and turned toward his horse. "Fine. You want to play tough? You got till sundown. After that, I'm coming back with more than words." He mounted and leaned down from the saddle. "And when I'm done, I'll burn this place down and salt the ground so nothing good grows again." Ruth stared at him, silent as stone. He spat on her porch and rode off. Dusk followed. She didn't breathe until they vanished over the ridge. By midday, the well rope was cut. At dusk, she found 3 of her calves gutted in the west pasture, throats slit. That night, the chicken coop went up in flames. Ruth put the fire out alone. No neighbors came. Not that she expected any. The town didn't just forget. It erased, and she was ash in its memory. By dawn, she was on the trail. She didn't wear black. She wore gray, like storm clouds, like gun smoke, like bone left too long in the sun. The rifle rode on her shoulder. Her boots tapped out a death march as she passed through the dust-blown edge of Ashval. People watched from behind curtains, through cracks in saloon doors. No one waved. No one spoke. At the church, the bell was already tolling. Sunday. She pushed the doors open mid him. Voices died. Heads turned. Thomas Wainwright sat in the front pew with his mother on one side, preacher on the other, and a smug look like he already owned the sermon. Ruth walked straight down the aisle, boots loud on the wooden floor. She stopped just short of the altar. "Thomas," she said, "you got something that belongs to me." The preacher stood. "Miss Bellamy, this is the Lord's." "Sit down," she snapped. He sat. Thomas stood slowly, buttoning his coat like a man preparing for ceremony. "You come in here like this, Ruth? In front of God and everyone. God don't go where girls scream and no one listens." Murmurs swept the pews. "You think you can shame me?" he asked. "You're a relic, a dried-up has-been, a crazy old witch on a ranch nobody wants." She stepped closer. Their boots nearly touched. "Then why are you so afraid?" He smirked. "I'm not." She leaned in, whispered low enough for only him. "Then meet me at sundown. Outside town. Just you and me. Bring your pride. Leave your boys." His smile cracked. Ruth stepped back, loud and clear now. "Let's see what kind of man the Wainwright boy really is." Then she turned, rifle on her back, and walked out past rows of wide-eyed stares. A few in the back stood as she passed. Not in fear, in respect. The sun hit the ridge like a burning coin, spilling gold across the canyon floor. Ruth stood alone in the dust, coat whipping in the wind, boots planted firm. The rifle rested in her arms. Loaded, oiled, familiar. Ash vow gathered along the edge of town like crows on a fence line, silent, waiting. Thomas Wainwright rode in, with 2 men at his flanks. He dismounted slow, savoring the weight of a crowd. Clean boots, starch coat, hair slicked back like a Sunday corpse. "You said just me," he called out. Ruth didn't move. "You planning to lie before or after you die?" He nodded once. The men stayed behind. He walked into the clearing. They stood 10 paces apart. Nothing between them but time and dust. Sheriff Dunn appeared on the edge, breathless and sweating. He didn't speak. He just stopped beside the preacher and watched. "Let's not drag this out," Thomas said, fingers brushing the grip of his revolver. "You're old, Ruth, and tired. You had a good run, but it ends here." She didn't blink. "Draw when you're ready." The wind held its breath. A tumbleweed rolled between them, then caught and crumbled. Thomas flinched. She didn't. He sneered, angry at himself. "I should have finished you when I had the chance." "You never had the chance." He reached for his gun. First shot. Crack. His pistol hit the dirt before it cleared leather. Thomas screamed and fell to his knees, clutching his shoulder, blood pouring through his fingers. Ruth lowered the rifle, calm and steady. The town gasped. One of the men behind Thomas made for his holster. Second shot. Faster than breath. The bullet shattered his hand, the pistol tumbling useless to the ground. "Don't," Ruth said without raising her voice. "Unless you want to lose more than your grip." The other man backed away slow, hands raised. Thomas was weeping now, not from pain but shame. "You think you've won?" he rasped. "This town will still remember me. My family built this place." Ruth walked toward him, step by deliberate step. The crowd parted behind her. She stopped just short of him, rifle loose in her grip. "You built a lie," she said, and filled it with silence. He looked up, hate and helplessness burning in his face. Ruth raised the rifle. Third shot. Into the sky. The echo cracked off the canyon walls. She turned slowly to face the people. "You all watched," she said, and said nothing. "You knew what he was. You let rot." No one spoke. The preacher lowered his eyes. The sheriff turned away. Ruth stepped back from Thomas, who slumped into the dirt like a broken puppet. She walked, past the crowd, past the town. No one stopped her. At the ridge above the valley, Eliza waited, wrapped in the old quilt, eyes wide. A small bag packed at her side. Ruth reached her without a word, helped her onto the horse, climbed up behind. Together, they rode out of Ash Vow, into the desert, into legend. They say the land healed after she left, that the Wainwright name rotted like old meat, that the town started listening a little more, fearing silence just enough to speak. Some say Ruth died out in Arizona. Others claim she rode with railroad men, guarding pay wagons and chasing ghosts. A few say she and the girl settled somewhere green. But every storyteller agrees on 3 things. She shot 3 times. She never missed, and justice rode with her.